the message. Legal and media analyst Lionel of Lionel Media is joining me now from New York. Lionel, thanks for joining me. It's not to say mainstream media didn't cover Occupy at all in the beginning, but certainly the media knob really turned up a dial when that unprovoked police pepper sprayed the protesters. What are your issues with the way mainstream media covered the movement?
From the beginning, from the outset, there was a tenor, there was an attitude that discounted the legitimacy and the momentum and the bases of what these people were protesting. Now, to be fair, it was at times perceived as being a little incoherent as far as what the message was. But you see, you got to understand something. Whenever you look at a movement, and the mainstream media does this sometimes with the Tea Party, it does this selectively. Black Lives Matter, it will handle very differently. But if it does not care for a particular message, if it wants to phrase or frame the optics of a movement as being superfluous or silly or pie in the sky or quixotic, that was the message. Now, one of the things, again, to repeat, was it was not perceived as being clear or coherent. Now, with people like Bernie Sanders, income inequality makes complete and total sense. But at the time this happened, the mainstream media scratched their heads and said, what are these people talking about? And then it did change, as you so correctly point out. When the police came in, when it was perceived as being violent, when it was overreaction, then people said, wait a minute, what's going on here? And then for a moment, there was at least a sense of an attempt to understand the plight of these people who were determined to make their cause known.
So
but there is this, I'm sorry.
What is it about their message, the 99%, the corporate greed, taking these people to Wall Street? What is it about that message that has mainstream media pinning it as silly in the beginning, as you mentioned?
Well, because the idea was that this was the idea, if you were to dare, especially in Wall Street or the financial district, to dare talk about capitalism, to talk about this notion of income inequality, especially by a lot of reporters who themselves were roughly the same ages of those people who were protesting, it seemed as quixotic or silly, as though you cannot do anything about income inequality, that greed is somehow off limits, that it's somehow inherently American to be greedy. And there was this disconnect. There was this inability to understand that what they were talking about was a systemic problem around not only this country, but the world. But understand, Bernie Sanders is saying exactly what they were saying then, and now he's being lauded. He makes a front page of Time magazine. The message is completely clear and limpid and clear today. But then, by virtue of the optics and the direction of the media, it was considered silly, pie in the sky, hippie-ish.
And some may say that it was an Occupy victory, that now candidates are actually talking about income inequality. But back in 2011, you know, the movement, it was less organized. There was no point people to go to, things that media are accustomed to when it comes to coming up with things. So is there a way in which this was organized that ended up hurting the coverage?
Well, there were many debates and many criticisms as far as the organization as well. But let me also speak to something. We're in a mood right now. We're in a trolling mentality, whether it's debates, whether it's social media, whether it's anything. The first thing that people love to do, irrespective of what the cause is to make fun of, is to chide, is to abuse, is to mock. It's almost becoming reflexive, because today our sense of activism is liking or retweeting or posting or commenting. That's as far as this thing goes, because there was a time in this country when young people got out and protested, they were considered laudable, and the cause was laudable. Today, by virtue of this snide reaction, look at the debates last night. 90%, I would venture to say, of the reaction to a debate is comments about hair and where you look. And what the mainstream media did then was, in that same light, talking about how dirty they were, dirty hippies, look at the conditions, look how they leave food out, irrespective of the message, not even listening to what they were saying.
Now, Lionel, I wish we had a little bit more time to talk about, as you briefly mentioned, how they're kind of covering Black Lives Matter a little differently. But for now, we're just going to have to leave it there. Legal and media analyst Lionel, thank you so much.
Thank you.